Welcome to Legoland, New York. A brand new park for 2021. It was actually supposed to open last year, but we all know what happened in 2020. So it's the 9th Legoland park in the world, and it's the first new park to be built in the Northeast in decades. So let's take a look at what's offered here. Now, I am not a connoisseur of Legos by any means. I've never seen any of the movies. I never played with the toys when I was a kid, so I didn't know what to expect when I went to this park. It's aimed at kids between the ages of 2 and 12, but we actually had a really good time here. So there's your ticket gates, and let's go on to the main midway. This right here is called Brick Street, and you can see the huge dragon there. It's probably a well-known Lego character, but I have no clue what it is. If any of you know, you can talk about it in the comments. Over on the left there was the park's big gift shop. Over on the right you have a mini market, a photo shop for picking up photos you might have taken in the park, lockers, restroom, and Brick Street Cafe, which is a really interesting concept. It's basically like a little deli where it's pre-made food that you can get, but you check yourself out. In the deli, you take your food and you either put your card through or you use your mobile device because, again, like many parks in the country, this is a cashless park. There's the psychedelic elephant with monkeys. Again, I have no clue what that means. And here is Brick Party, which is the whimsical carousel they have. Of course, all with Lego characters and all designed to look like Lego bricks. Even the top canopy of the ride looks like Lego bricks. Now, even though I mentioned I don't know anything about Legos, this really appealed to me. It has a lot of just joy and delight to it. The colors in this park are just bright primaries everywhere. It's really, really fun to look at. Now, you have two choices here. You can go left or you can go straight. Over here you can see this sort of Lego model of the world, and there are banners around it advertising a new water park that's coming. So what we're going to do is go straight through here and make a counterclockwise circuit of the park. The park is really huge, as you'll see in a minute. All over the park are these wonderful little statuettes, Lego statuettes, that are just fun to look at. Over here is my doppelganger sitting on a bench. And now look at this vista. Legoland is in Goshen, New York, at the foot of the Catskill Mountains. And from here, you get a vista of the entire park, and as you can see, it goes down pretty steeply. We're at the top of a very high hill, and the park is one long circuit on a hill. All you have are these paths currently. A lot of people in the park weren't following these paths. They were making their own paths, crossing the grass to get down to where they wanted to go, because otherwise it's a long walk to get down to the bottom where actually the park formally starts. So right now we're in Miniland, and Miniland, as some of you might know, is Lego recreations of famous landmarks. And what you're looking at right here is a replica of famous places in Goshen, New York. You can see the harness racing track over here, and one of the neat things is there are these little controls at various places in the park where kids can make things happen. Now over here, the harness racetrack has horses and they can race, and kids can choose a different horse and turn a little crank that makes the horses go fast. But a lot of it wasn't working. The park was delayed by the pandemic, and it was still in progress when we were there. There were things that weren't quite finished. As you can see, the landscaping is just growing in, so there's still a bit of work to do, and I'm sure as this park matures, it's going to be absolutely gorgeous. especially the way they've planted all the trees around, the way the landscaping goes. So that was Goshen that we just looked at. Over on the right, as you can imagine, that's New York City, and it's divided into the 5 boroughs, and each borough gets a little section all its own. And the detail on some of these models is remarkable. And another thing that really impressed me was the sense of humor, which, from what I understand, is in the movies as well. But there's this really sort of silly, wry sense of humor to all of the models, and I'll show you some of those as we get further into it. And notice it's a long, long walk. If you're coming back this way, so if you go in a clockwise motion around the park, this is a really daunting path to follow for older people or people who have trouble walking, because it is relentlessly uphill the whole way. Whereas going counterclockwise, the path getting back up is a little less steep, so it's a little easier a walk. So here we're getting to one of the first boroughs that we're going to look at in New York. Now, a lot of these roads have vehicles that move all autonomously. You can see there's some of the controls, and you can see kids were playing with some of the characters out there. There's the Crystal Palace. And when everything's running, we saw some things running at various points during the day. It really is remarkable to watch. It looks like a real city. Coming up on the left is Manhattan, and you can see the Central Park Carousel there on the left. Here's a nice view of basically the rest of the lands of the park all laid out before you. Very scenic. Here's Broadway, and you can see these signs, like instead of the Lion King, they have the leopard prints. There's an advertisement for Arby's that was changed to Arby's for pirates. A lot of little fun stuff like that. And over here, you can see a replica of the World Trade Center, and there is also a display of the 9/11 memorial with running water. You could easily spend the better part of your day just walking through Miniland and looking at all the incredible detail they put into this. And it's only going to get better as time goes on, because they were still, as I said, constructing things. Over here, you have all of these pulleys that are not connected to anything. So I assume they will be getting boats that are attached to those cables, and you'll have boats actually floating around the river. There's Kitty Box instead of the City Stadium there. The big globe from the World's Fair. And over here, a little tribute to Coney Island. And there you can see those little controls where kids can make things move. So, yeah, lots to do just in this area alone. And this was actually my favorite part of the park. I was just amazed by this. So as you can see, people are making their own paths here, as I said earlier. The designers are sort of trying to force you to follow this path, which really doesn't lead anywhere in particular. It just has this big circuitous path to get you down there, and people are going to make their own way because they don't want to walk that distance to get right to the next thing in line. So I think you're going to see changes made to the flow of the park to make it a little easier for people to get to one place to another if they want to. Or you can just follow this path if you want to. Or they might have more stuff coming, because there's a lot of empty space still in the park. It's built on 500 acres, and they've only used 150 of it. So there's still a lot of room for additions. Here you can see they have color guard marching outside the Capitol building, and they had to fix that because they weren't working properly. So a lot of work going on. Over here, if you look on the left, they have a helicopter that kids can make rise up into the air. There it goes. There's the Washington Monument. So as you can tell, the further we get into Miniland, the further out into the U.S. the display is spread. And it covers most landmarks that you're familiar with in most areas of the country. Here are more of those pulleys I was talking about, so they'll have boats going out on the water there. And this section over here represents Boston. So we are in section 2 of the park. There are 7 sections. We explored Brick Street, and now we're in Miniland. There are 5 other sections we're going to look at. And unlike most other parks that I've been to, in Legoland, you have to explore these sequentially. In other words, you can only explore them clockwise or counterclockwise, but you can't get from one section to another randomly, unless you want to walk down these steep hills across the grass to get to where you want to go. And ironically, the park is filled with signs everywhere that say, please do not walk on the grass and stay off of the sculptures, and you found that families and kids weren't really paying attention to that. So I think the park's going to need to look at that in the future to figure out human nature. People always want to take the shortest route to get to wherever they want to go, and they don't necessarily want to follow what the designers intended. Now take a look up the hill there at how far down we've come. That was just the New York section, and we're already maybe 100 feet below where we were before. So Miniland is actually more of a transitional area to get you from way up at the top of the park to where all the rides really are at the bottom of the park. Now, of course, there are some rides if you were to take a left at the entrance and head toward that section, but those are a little different. They're more like simulator rides. The sort of amusement park type rides are more down toward the bottom, except for the castle area, which we'll get to in a little bit. And with this parody of Hollywood, we come to the end of Miniland, and we get to the next section of the park. You can see those cannons going off over there. This is Lego Pirates, and there are 3 main rides in this section. The big pool that you can see over on the right, that's Rogue Riders, and I had only seen that type of ride before at European parks. It's hard to describe. It's sort of like a combination of a jet ski melded with a whip ride. You're sort of standing in these boats that have a rudder on them, and as they spin around, they sort of swing out. And as you can see, all those water cannons are automated and they're constantly going off, so you get really wet on that ride. The day we were there, it was extremely hot. It was in the 90s with high humidity, so the water felt fine. In front of us on the left is Anchors Away, which is a sort of spinning pirate ship ride. In the background, you can see more of the wonderful architecture in the park. And you can see all these little details, the statuary that are just placed at various locations. You know, some Lego starfish, Lego palm trees. We'll go get a closer look at Rogue Riders here. And this gives you an idea of how far down the hillside we've come. That red line at the top of the hill is the roof of the hotel. Yes, Lego has a big resort hotel that, of course, looks like Lego bricks. And this big pirate ship is a play structure for kids. And there are a lot of play structures scattered throughout the park. And over here is Splash Battle, where families can get in boats, and they have squirt guns, and they can fire at each other as the boats pass by. There are also water guns for spectators to shoot at the boats as well. And this, to me, is what really separates Legoland from a lot of other parks. almost everything in the park is geared for families to do together. And as you're going to see, there are some things that you have to do together. You can't, the rides absolutely would not work unless the family was doing it together. So kudos to the park for doing that, for bringing families, getting them off their phones and away from video games into a big environment like this to just have quality time together doing stuff. There's Anchors Away. And over on the right is Brickbeard's Food Market. Now let me say a few things about the food at the park. I was really impressed. They have an incredible variety. So for me, you know, I'm vegetarian or pescatarian. They had a bounty of food that I could eat. They had grilled tofu in there, which may not sound appetizing, but they did a really good job with it. And veggies and salads, pizzas, veggie burgers, basically any type of food you want. If you want just regular park food like hamburgers and hot dogs, you got that. If you want chicken, you got that. If you want barbecue, you've got that. If you want vegetarian, you got that. There was a lot of variety, and it was pretty darn good food. You have little stations like this around the park if you want to refill your drinks. So now we are at sort of the bottom end of the park. That's where Lego Pirates is. We're starting to make our way back up. But as you're going to see, the incline from here is going to be much more gradual. So it won't be the incredible ordeal of going all the way up through Miniland all at once. There's a lot that'll take your attention and stop you as you're making your trek this way. So we have now entered the next section of the park, Lego City. Over on the right, you can see a diaper changing station. The big red building there is Briccolini's Pizza and Pasta, which serves, as you would expect, pizza and pasta. And over here on the left is Fire Academy, and this is one of those interactive rides that I was talking about. Families get into these fire trucks together, and there's a fire, and it's projected on an LCD screen, and you have a pumper truck, and you have to pump the hose in order to get water to spray on these LCD screens, and you can see the fire gradually go out. It's really clever, and families seem to be having a really good time on it. Then in front of us with the blue and red, that's the Palace Cinema, which shows 4D movies. Over here is the driving school, and this section is for teens, and you basically have these little electric cars that go around a city street. There's also a junior driving school for little preschoolers and small fry that they can use that. So there's the Palace Cinema. And again, nice little details here. You have the paparazzi and the limo pulled up out front. This was a really popular photo spot for people. Everybody was sitting in that car taking their picture in front of the cinema. There's a Lego Statue of Liberty. There's the junior driving school in the distance. I don't know what this blank area is here. I think this is another little unfinished area that they're working on. Now over here in front of us is Coast Guard Academy. From the description that I read on this, it seemed to be more interactive originally, but now it looks more like it's just a boat ride around this little pond area. Somebody got stopped by the cops. Granny is getting a ticket. Here's another interactive play area on the right. There you can actually get your license after you've driven successfully. Get a little picture of yourself and a certificate. That's the junior driving school there. And another interactive play area. Now over here on the right, this was something that was new to me, Granny's apple fries. I'd never had these before, and they were really good. Basically, they slice apples like French fries and deep fry them with a coating, and they're basically French fries, but they're apples. Quite tasty, and they give you a little caramel dipping sauce and whipped cream with it. And that's the end of Lego City, and now we're heading into the next area. Now these two statues on either side here, they didn't do it when I was walking through, unfortunately, but all day when we were walking by there, this little kitty had a big growl, and this big lion had a little meow, and they would do that all day. It was pretty funny. So now we begin the trek back uphill in earnest, but as you're going to see, this walk is going to be interrupted by different sections of the park, so it's not going to be as daunting as Miniland. This is also part of Lego's little nature trail that they have in this section, and so you'll see these Lego recreations of various wildlife, like these wolves, which are really nicely done. There's one of those signs telling people to keep off. Also, notice the background music. It changes with every section of the park, and it's the type of music I really like in a park. It's not pop music, it's not in your face. It just sits in the background to create a mood for you in that section of the park. And it was really nicely done. So now we're entering the Lego Castle area of the park. It's sort of medieval themed, and this has the one major ride in the park that you would expect in an amusement park, a roller coaster. And of course, being Legoland, it is a family coaster that anyone can ride, but it's a lot of fun, and we'll see that in a minute. They also had those nice water bottle stations as well as bubblers around the park. That was a nice, thoughtful thing for them to do. So there's the big castle. And of course, there's a gift shop, there's a restaurant, and there's the dragon coaster, which we'll get to in a moment. Over here on the left, this is another type of ride I've never seen before. This is Tower Climb Tournament, where families get together and challenge each other to try to climb to the top of the tower as fast as they can. Really interesting design. And there's the entrance to the Dragon. It's basically a combination roller coaster and dark ride. The first half of the ride, you basically go through Lego scenes with animatronics that sort of set up the story of stealing gold from the dragon, and then you get blasted up. Well, not blasted, because it's not a thrill ride. You move very quickly up that lift hill, and then there's just a series of helixes and light hills that take you around and then back to the station. So it's enjoyable for the whole family, nothing too thrilling or too extreme, and yet a lot of fun. Now if you notice the slushie the woman was just carrying there, bright yellow, they have food and drink, like ice cream, that is primary colors. They have bright yellow, bright red ice cream. It tastes just like ice cream, it's just pretty humorous that they color it to look like Legos. Here's Dragon's Apprentice, a kiddie coaster. If the other coaster is too big for the small fry. Now there's one of the few instances in the park where they have stairs, so you don't have to go around the entire loop of the pavement. But we'll go around the loop. I really like how they intermingle Lego pine trees with real pine trees throughout. Now notice the music has changed. It still has a medieval feel, but it's a little different in this section. And we're still on the nature trail, as you can see. Another interesting thing about the park that I've never encountered before is parking. And There are 3 massive parking lots, all tiered, one higher than another, and 2 of them were completely filled when we were there. But you don't pay to get into the park when you go to park. Normally they have parking gates and you have to, cough up cash right when you get in the park. You just go right in and park. They have you pay for parking when you leave the park. So I guess if you don't pay, you never leave. The ride that we just passed on the left there, Merlin's Mayhem, was another thing I really had never seen before. It's like a normal jet ride, like a Disney's Dumbo ride, where you just sit and the ride goes up and down as you go around. But in this one, how high you go depends on how hard you pedal. They're like bicycles. And the faster you pedal, the higher your little car will go. Get a little exercise while you're riding. Also, to the right of Merlin's Mayhem was one of those ice cream concessions I was telling you about that gives you the brightly colored ice cream. One thing that shocked me about the park, and not in a good way, was pricing. Now, the park had a soft opening early in the summer, and it was about $50 to get in. And they said at the time that not everything was going to be running, so that's why they were giving you a deal. Well, now it's full price. There are still things that aren't fully working, but it is full price, and that price is $80 admission, plus $20 parking. So you're talking $100 to get in the park, and those are Disney prices. That's incredibly expensive for most families. I don't know if they give discounts or group discounts or how they would do it, but it seems a little pricey right now. Now, it could be that in the future, as the park grows, that will be a bargain. Because, again, they have 500 acres to work with. They have a water park that they're working on. So I assume that it will be a good value as time goes on, although they may keep raising their prices as time goes on. So, yeah, I do like the park, but right now I think the pricing is sort of like the park's layout, a little bit steep. And I know there was some controversy in the Goshen area about having this park come in here, but they really did pick a gorgeous location for this. The scenery is pretty stunning. Now, technically, we're still in the Lego Castle area of the park, even though it's really way over there. And this is one of the last bits in that section. In front of us, that big roof, it's the Legoland Theater. And when we were there, they had a show, basically a clown show with firefighters trying to put out a fire. A sort of Three Stooges kind of thing. If you look off in the distance, you can see cars going by way out there. That's actually the entrance road to the park. The park is barely visible from the highway. You really got to look for it, and the signage right now isn't that great. And this is where the walk becomes more noticeable, the having to follow these winding paths, because at this point there really wasn't much else here. So you're simply just walking. There's nothing really to look at, although they had a few things on the nature trail. But it's just a long haul to get up this next section. And over here you have a popcorn stand. The big green wall that you see in front of us is part of the main show attraction for the next land we're going to enter, Ninjago Land. I'm surprised they left it like that. Everything else in the park is so colorful. It's odd that they would just have this plain green wall there as opposed to putting Lego bricks on it or putting some trees in front of it or something. Maybe that's coming in the future. But the Ninjago Land is really nicely themed and has probably the most intense ride in the park, Ninjago the Ride, which is a 4D simulator ride. I actually don't know what these were. I didn't see anyone playing with them while we were there. And there is Ninjago the Ride. Not those bricks in front of you, the big red building. Over on the left is another kids' play area, but at this time of day they were having a little show for the kids there, and they have street performers all over the park doing stuff throughout the day. Hi, Karen. Oh, obviously there's the entrance to Ninjago the Ride. That's a big building. On the left here is Jay's Gravity Force Trainer. It's not really named after me. I assume it's a Lego character. I don't know. But it's basically just a typical Matterhorn ride that you'd find at most carnivals, but heavily themed to Legos. And notice the Ninja Games on the right. Half of it's closed. Just like many other parks this year, they were feeling the effects of the labor shortage, so not everything could open. So now we're exiting the Ninjago section and entering the final section of Legoland, Bricktopia. And this has another major ride in it. It was actually a lot of fun. A little short, but a lot of fun. So here you have some more food concessions, nice little picnic area there, and here's another wonderful panoramic view looking out onto the expanse of the park, showing you how high up we are now compared to the rest of it. And I think all those cars you see out there are employee parking, because none of the guests were parking out there. Guests are all up behind the hotel, which is that huge red and blue and white and brown structure that you see in front of you. That's the Legoland Hotel. So here we are in Bricktopia. And in front of us is the major ride here, the Lego Factory Adventure Ride. It's hard to describe. Half the ride is pretty much the queue, which is pretty interesting. It gives you a lot of facts about Legos, how they started, when they were made. And it has displays of not only Legos, but also the ride mechanism itself. And then when you actually get into the cars, the ride is fairly short, but it's really interesting. It's a trackless dark ride system, and the cars do this sort of dance, a choreography with each other. It's pretty amazing. And it starts off sort of like the Hershey Chocolate Factory ride, where it tells you how they were made, but then it goes off the rails and it becomes this sort of battle of some sorts. But it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. At the end of the ride, they take your picture and you have an opportunity to buy a Lego figure of yourself. And in front of us now is Stepping Tones, just a little entertaining fountain with musical instruments. And from the name, you'd think you're supposed to step on something. So you saw kids stomping on the pavement, but there are actually sensors in front. You walk in front of it and it makes the musical instrument play. There's the Duplo Express. And behind us is Smokey's Brickbeard. So it's a barbecue place. I like the Lego fork there and the knife. Creative Workshop. You can go and play around with building Legos. Over here is DJ's Dizzy Disco Spin, which is a teacups ride. And that brings us back to the entrance. That's the big shop, the gift shop. And there's the carousel over there. Legoland has a lot going for it. It's centrally located, very easy to get to. It is gorgeous. I mean, the landscaping in the park is beautiful. The location is beautiful. The architecture is remarkable. The rides are a lot of fun. It's very family oriented. The only problem in my view is I think it's a little overpriced at this point. I mean, Six Flags charges a similar amount, but they always have discounts, so you never pay full price for it. And maybe Legoland will follow suit eventually. So if you're in the Northeast area, the park is centrally located. It's a short drive from New England. It's right in New York. It's a short drive from Pennsylvania, Ohio. And if you have small children, they will absolutely love this place. And the adults will have a good time too, because again, everything can be done with the families together. So if you're in the Goshen, New York area, this is now a destination, Legoland, New York.